I've wanted to do freshly milled flour in my bread so that I could have a more nutritious bread, but it's been a struggle. Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and my goal is to make homemaking simple. I tried freshly milled flour in my bread a few times, and I finally found a recipe that I think is going to work that I really, really like. And I hope that you guys like it as well. So I'm going to do a little walkthrough step by step of what I did to make this bread. And hopefully, you can also reproduce this as well and enjoy it with your families. I have a KitchenAid attachment for my green mill, and while I will say that it is not the best thing out there, that's what I have, and so I use that for my green mill. It does come out pretty gritty, even though I'm on the finest setting, but I do find that autolyse, which is when you let the flour rest with its water or whatever liquid you're using, it makes a pretty big difference in how gritty the overall texture is once it's done. So highly recommend don't skip that step. Basically, my recipe calls for a total of almost 4 cups of flour, but I just put the freshly milled flour in, which was 2 cups. So I did a half all-purpose, half freshly milled, and then I had that water in there. So that sat for like 15 to 20 minutes before I added the rest of the flour and the other ingredients into this. And then I only added about a cup and 3/4 cup maybe. And part of the reasoning why I got rid of the extra flour was apparently freshly milled flour like hydrates differently, and so you can use less overall flour compared to your liquid and compared to when you would just be using all-purpose flour. I also then added in 1 stick of butter or half a cup of butter, and it probably would have been better if it had been a bit softer, or at least it would have combined easier. And then 1 cup of active starter. This part is important, and I've tried freshly milled dough before, and it ends up pretty dense. And if you wanted to try this with a yeast, you maybe would get a fluffier loaf than what I got. But I'm pretty happy with these results, so I'm going to keep doing it like this. And I've been doing sourdough for 3 years now, and I've gotten fairly used to it. So then I'm going to let that knead in the mixer. I also added salt to this. I would say add somewhere between a teaspoon and a tablespoon, depending on how salty you want that. Then once you've got all of that mixed in there, let it knead. And it took a long time to knead, probably 20 minutes. And then I let that rise overnight. I did overproof this, so it was pretty like runny. Make sure that you butter your loaf pans after it's proofed for those 12 hours, and then put the dough into those pans. And I really am not particular about this. I just like pull the dough apart in half and put it into my pans, but you could measure it out if you were more precise about it. I'm not precise about it. And honestly, I find that my dough and my bread still works, and I don't need to be precise about it. The dough was still pretty like sticky and runny, which I think part of this was overproofed, and that's why it was like that. But it did still rise after I left it in the pan. Do another like 2 to 4 hours, depending on temperature and maybe how active your starter was at the time, and until the dough is like doubled in size. And then I baked these at 375 for 45 minutes. This is what they look like when they came out. Mama. Pretty good. Normally, when I make freshly milled bread, it just doesn't turn out. And this time, like, look how squishy, how soft it was. The crumb is amazing. And yes, it was overproofed, so it's not a perfect loaf. But overall, I am really, really happy with this. I have been trying to find something that would work for the freshly milled that actually tastes good. This one is soft and yummy and hearty, and I'm just so happy with how it turned out. So go ahead and try it and let me know if it works for you guys.